If you're familiar with my channel, you might also be familiar with the work of Miles Luna, who recently said this.
Obviously, everybody's just trying to help, but the thing that drives me crazy is how people will speak with such a matter-of-fact, I know everything tone. People will make a comment, maybe it's like a criticism or something, and you go, okay, yeah, that's a fair critique, but you don't want to listen to them because of the way they said it.
About someone?
Oh, this is clearly why this was animated this way.
But people don't really get what I mean when I say that's a self-destructive attitude to take into any creative endeavor. Accepting criticism is an important step towards self-betterment. And that's not implying that you should change everything on the whim of a YouTube comment, but you need to understand where the criticism is coming from, even if it's misinformed.
Motherfucker, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but the reason I fucking hate you is because you talk like you do and other stupid people listen to you.
Because there's always a reason that they misunderstood you. Now that reason could be that they're a goddamn idiot. Trust me, I know this from experience. But if you don't take it seriously enough to evaluate the complaint, all you see is someone being mean to you, which is exactly what you didn't want in the first place. We're all aware of the adage, you learn more from failure than from success. And if you're given the gift of all your failures laid out in detail for you to look upon in shame, you've been saved the trouble of unlearning your own biases, at least for the time being. And brushing that off because you got called retarded or something is sort of making their point for them, right? If you wrote something, odds are you thought it was a good idea at the time. Not only would that make taking your own personal step back more difficult, other people might instinctively know that you thought it was a good idea, and then consider telling you that your judgment sucked to be a personal attack, even though that's something you need to hear if you intend to get over yourself. Or the very likely possibility that your fans don't notice the really obvious problems with your work and are therefore unable to point them out. By defending someone from legitimate criticism, you're doing more harm than good. As an example of what I'm talking about, I tweeted this at Miles, which only has a negative connotation if you believe what he wrote was another glorified or less than glorified cafe scene, which is the worst way to deliver an exposition dump, and exposition dumps are the worst way to tell a story. Now this attracted the attention of a few people who thought calling out 2 layers of inexcusably bad judgment was inappropriate. But now imagine the flip side of this. He said writing has been stressful and that he needs to step up his game, but he clearly didn't see the problem with writing the majority of Volume 5 as a bunch of characters sitting around talking about nothing. This could have made him consider that the reason the scene he wrote was more fun was because it had more verbs than just sits and says. So what would you get more out of? Someone trying to shut down criticism? Someone calling it bullying? Someone calling it unnecessary? Because clearly having made a work that deserves heavy criticism is somehow not a reason to believe their next work will have equivalent problems. Or getting the criticism itself and evaluating why it was made in the first place and why it was so damn rude. It's because criticism is a naturally occurring creative resource. If you watch something, you will have thoughts about it. Unless you don't, in which case that's its own problem. But those thoughts exist. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think it did some things really cool and other things really bad? Did you think it's a magnificent train wreck that needs to be dissected for posterity? These thoughts exist in the form they were thought up in. So hearing the initial reaction of someone who didn't like your work, tone and all, is an extremely valuable bit of information to have, especially if they can offer specific reasons they felt that way. Unless your goal is to be a auteur, in which case paying any mind to feedback, positive or negative, is kind of doing it wrong. Because everyone has an opinion, but very few people put themselves in a position to invite those opinions onto themselves. And I know it's a little cold to say, well, it's what he signed up for. But if someone wants to call you a fuckboy for ending a sentence in a preposition 3 lines ago, they're just gonna do it. And this applies to everyone, including me. I mean, just look at how much stuff I changed from my Volume 1 review going into Volume 2. So even if something turned out as you intended, you still need to evaluate the reception. Unless you want to be a auteur, then knock yourself out, I guess.